Morning, sons. For those of my two viewers who don't know this, and I don't know who my two viewers are, I do this for my sons. I don't see very often. I have four boys, and so I'm telling them a little bit about myself and a little instruction and whatnot. And so today I'm going to be working on a United States Coast Guard certificate. Although I've heard they're hard to get for old boats like this one, so I don't know. I need to work on the stuffing box, which is where my leak's coming from. And I need to go register with the VA here. Okay, let's see here. So we talked about, I was telling you about my first wife. I was telling you about Georgia and the first unit I was in, 2-7 Infantry, the tornado, the alligators. Oh, the humidity, it was so hot there. Actually, it's hot where I'm at now in Florida. It's every day it's at least 88 degrees, sometimes 93, and I think somewhere around 77% humidity. I wake up in the morning and this sheet here is drenched, just drying out. The blanket's drenched, is wet with sweat. But if I don't have the blanket on, these no-see-um bugs, they just eat you up and you can't even sleep because you're scratching so hard. And so anyway, I had originally planned on joining the Army, and I was going to get money for school and then get out and go to college, and I wanted to study biblical languages, and I still do. I should call the school, actually. Anyway, so, but I was married, and I thought the right thing to do would be to continue in the military and support my new family, and which consisted of my wife, but it was my logic. In the Army back then, they would allow you to either first re-enlistment, change your job, or go wherever you wanted to go. And I had a desire to go to Italy. I still do. Fortunately, they had no slots for me in Italy, so I went to Alaska, which I do not regret at all. I still consider that place home. I love Alaska. Someday I'd love to live back there again. So me and my first wife, Terry, we actually drove from Georgia. Oh man, we Tennessee, all the way across South Dakota, saw the Grand Tetons, and they're beautiful, by the way. And Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I'll never forget. We were in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and there was a family there, and the grandparents, and then the parents and the grandkids, and they were in this ski store, and they were selling ski stuff, and the grandparents just totally outfitted the whole family, the kids, the grandkids, everybody with brand new everything, ski clothes, jackets, the skis, they dropped a pretty penny that day. And what else I remember too is as we were driving through Wyoming, we were going through this small town. And Terry needed a pair of insulated boots, and because it was cold in Alaska. And we stopped off at this small town. There was a camping outfit store, and we went in there. And I'll never forget the local people would just go in and grab whatever they wanted. Nobody at the register. A little book at the register that they would write down what they had bought and their name, and then they would just pay the bill later. And I thought, wow, it would just be so neat to live in a town where, that people were good like that, and you could trust people. And I'd still like to go back and check that place out. I wonder if it's changed much. So we went through. I remember after we got into Idaho, and I remember I got so sick, my tongue turned black. It was really gross. I remember I was in a big hurry to get back to California, too, because I wanted to vote for the elections. Anyway, and whenever I would PCS, I'd go home and visit my family, my mom and dad. And let's see. And then from California, we drove up to, this is a funny story. So we decided to drive to Alaska, and we stopped off in Canada, and Canada, at the border, they asked, do you have any firearms, explosives, yada yada yada. And I said, well, yeah, I have a rifle. And I was actually had gotten permission to ahead of time to carry this rifle through. Well, the Canadians aren't real big on firearms. Let me tell you what. So they had us pull over, and then there was a small interrogation with me, and they wanted to search the vehicle. And in confusion and everything, I accidentally locked the keys in the truck, and the authorities were not happy about that. They wanted to search the vehicle. Anyway, my 2 German Shepherds were in there too, and they were so protective, and they didn't care for the authorities too much. They're in Canada. And anyway, so they're upset about me having a firearm, and they were like, oh, well, how long is it going to take during the interrogation? How long is it going to take you to get through Canada? I said, I don't know, a few days, 6 days. Why is it going to take you so long? I said, I don't know, 5 days? Why 5 days? I said, and maybe 4. 4 days is too long. Well, I guess I could make it in 3. And it's going through British Columbia and the Yukon is it's quite a trek, especially for a California boy. They'd never driven in the snow. And I remember we got over the border and into this small town, and driving through British Columbia and the Yukon back then, this would have been around 2000, was something like, it reminded me of, maybe it would be like driving back into the old west of the United States or something, It was a little primitive, but nice. I remember they still used silver dollars. I don't know if they were actually silver, but it's kind of cool. I liked the Canadian money. And I remember this woman, we stopped at there was these gas stations. Some of them had, I remember this one gas station we stopped at, and the gas prices were fairly high in Canada, higher than the United States, and had a glass globe still on it, like an antique, something you'd see in an antique store. Actually probably be worth a lot of money, but they still used it to pump gas. I remember the lady said, hey, I don't care how much gas costs, you make sure you fill up every time you stop somewhere. And she was right, because sometimes, it was not uncommon. You'd easily go 100 miles without seeing a gas station, or anybody, for that matter. And we were driving, and somewhere in British Columbia, and there was this little motel gas station diner place, and so we stopped to get gas and I think something to eat, and I was talking to the manager of this establishment, and he was a young guy, and there was maybe I don't know, 3 or 4 employees, and I said, well, how are the roads north of here? Actually, interesting story. That road, the Alcan Highway, was put in by the United States Army in 1 year. You know what an engineering feat that was? I've watched them work on the 405. A half a mile of the 405 once took over a year for them to do. Anyway, so pretty impressive to go all that far in a year. And anyway, I asked this guy how the roads were further north. He says, I don't know, I haven't left here in 6 months. I couldn't believe it. This place, 6 months? He's out in the middle of nowhere. What's he been doing out here for 6 months, Anyway, we traveled further up, and we were in the Yukon, and I don't remember, what was the big town in the Yukon? Whitehorse. Anyway, we stopped off in this little village. A lot of native people there in the Yukon, and there was a gas station we stopped at. We left, and just as we were leaving town, my tire goes flat, and I had forgotten a year prior to that, my tire had gone flat, and I'd put that green goo. No, it wasn't even green goo back then. It was just, stuff you put in your tire. Anyway, and it finally had gone out, and fortunately, it was right before we had really gotten anywhere. And that reminds me of the trailer incident coming back. Anyway, so at the gas station, the mechanic there, he fixed the tire, and it was great, and carried on. So there was a large bridge going over the border. I think it was the Yukon River. It was going into Tok, Alaska, which I love Tok. Beautiful. Anyway, we're in the truck, and everything had been fine so far. You know, driving in the snow, I kind of gotten used to, but you know, we hit that bridge, and I learned, you know, that basically because there's no insulation underneath them, you know, they get very slick. You know, just a sheet of ice, and actually, it was a good introduction coming into Alaska. They don't salt the roads there. It's in the wintertime. There's almost 6 months of ice on the road, and it's like driving around on a dang sheet of ice, you know, like a hockey rink, you know. And as a matter of fact, you stop at the stop sign and the green light comes on, and you wait a few seconds, 3 or 4 seconds, because a lot of times a car would come sliding, spinning through the intersection, you know, and come the other direction. But anyway, so we hit this bridge, and down below the bridge is just this, you know, like you see on TV with the like glacial ice, and you know, it would have been probably a cold, frozen, drowning death, you know. But I lose control, and I did a lot of praying during that short time. I lost traction, and we were going towards the guardrail of this bridge, almost to go over, and finally got corrected and went into Tok, and there was I made some friends there, and some locals, and it was November, and they invited me to go fishing. Well, shoot, yeah, you know, go fishing, and we went out, and we're in, I don't know, there were 5 or so pickup trucks, and we're out on this frozen lake. And, you know, I'm a little concerned that we're driving pickup trucks on a frozen lake, and then there's a guy drilling holes with a motorized auger, drilling these holes everywhere in the ice. And, you know, and the ice is actually about anywhere between 3 and 4 foot thick, actually. And then one of the trucks is full of pallets, just up to the rim, and we're unloading these pallets that are over my head, and this guy's dumping 2-cycle fuel all over, and I'm like, what are you doing? You know, it's like, oh, this is the fire to keep us warm while we're fishing. So we're on a frozen lake fishing with these big trucks, well, not big trucks, but I mean trucks, you know, parked on this frozen ice, and you're gonna have a bonfire right in the middle of it all. How does that work? And actually, how it worked was the ice would melt about a foot down, and then that wood burning would float on top of it. But anyway, I thought it was kind of sketchy, and I did so much hunting and fishing there in Alaska. There was there was a time, I think it was around Christmas time, me and Terry were walking to a friend's house that was a couple of blocks over, and all of a sudden somebody's just blaring the horn on their car, and this moose just runs right around us. He was about to stampede us, or she, and that was a serious problem in Alaska. Sometimes we get phone calls from our soldiers, hey, I can't come in right now, there's a moose between me and the car, and sometimes they would be aggressive. Yeah, I remember hearing the hooves, and you know, like a horse, and the moose up there in Alaska were about the size of horses. They were very big. They'd eat willow branches. Anyway, no, it was the rabbits that ate willow branches. Everything ate willow branches up there except me, I think. Anyway, there was a fishing community in Seward. Oh, there's so much to say about Alaska. I wonder if I should say some of it. Anyway, well, I don't have anything else to do. We were driving down to Seward, and there was, maybe I'll leave it off here. Drive down to Seward, and there were some goats, and I'll tell you about it. It was beautiful. I love you guys. Read your Bibles, and have a good day.